Ever wondered what went on behind the gilded doors of French palaces? Today, we're pulling back the velvet curtains to expose every French king caught in adultery, from the early Merovingians all the way to the fall of the Second Empire in 1870. Get ready, because this is a royal saga of passion, power, and infidelity. Let's travel back to the early days, starting with the Merovingian dynasty. These weren't just kings, they were practitioners of polygamy on a grand scale. Clothar I, who ruled in the 6th century, didn't just have one mistress. He had multiple wives and concubines simultaneously. We're talking about a royal household with Ingund, her sister Arrogant, Radigund, Gunthuga, and Chunsina all vying for his attention. His grandson, Theudebert I, wasn't much different. He had a mistress named Deuteria, whom he eventually abandoned to make a strategic marriage, only to take up with another unnamed concubine later. Then there was Charibert I, a man who took the concept of the more, the merrier to a whole new level. He was juggling for women at once: Ingoberga, Marifold, her sister Markovifa, who was actually a nun, and Theodogald. This wasn't just adultery, it was a flagrant violation of church law, which didn't sit well with the religious authorities of the time. His brother, Chilperic I, had a story straight out of a soap opera. He was infatuated with his mistress Fredegund, so much so that she allegedly orchestrated the murder of his wife, Queen Galswintha, clearing the way for Fredegund to take her place on the throne. The pattern continued. Theudebert II had his wife Bilichild murdered so he could be with his new love, Theodokild. And Dagobert I, while officially married to Queen Nantild, kept a bustling court that included his prominent concubines Ragnitrude and Berchildis. Even the legendary Charlemagne, the great unifier of Europe, had a complicated personal life. Alongside his wives, he had a string of well-known concubines, including Himiltrude, Maud Regina, and several others. It seems that for these early kings, monogamy was more of a suggestion than a rule. As we move into the Carolingian and Capetian dynasties, the church's rules on marriage became stricter, but that didn't stop the kings. Louis the Pious, Charlemagne's son, was caught with a concubine named Theodolind while married to the formidable Empress Judith. His grandson, Louis the Stammerer, engaged in outright bigamy. He had his first marriage to Ansgardy annulled just so he could marry Adelaide of Paris, a move that caused a huge political and religious firestorm. Centuries later, Robert II, ironically nicknamed the Pious, found himself in a similar jam. He was desperately in love with Bertha of Burgundy, but was already married to Rosala of Italy. He tried to have his first marriage annulled to marry Bertha, leading to a direct conflict with the Pope and his excommunication. Then came Philip I, a king whose nickname, the Amorous, tells you everything you need to know. He repudiated his first wife, Bertha of Holland, to elope with Bertha de Montfort, who was already married herself. This double scandal earned him an excommunication that lasted for years. The trend of royal bigamy reached a fever pitch with Philip II, also known as Philip Augustus. He was a brilliant military strategist, but a disaster in his marital life. He despised his second wife, Ingeborg of Denmark, and repudiated her almost immediately after their wedding. He then married his beloved Agnes of Maronia, effectively having two queens at once. The Pope was not amused and placed the entire kingdom of France under an interdict, which meant no church services, no baptisms, no burials. It was a national crisis, all because the king couldn't keep his affairs in order. On top of that, he had a well-known mistress, the Dame Dares. Jumping forward to the House of Valois, the nature of royal affairs began to change. Instead of trying to marry their mistresses, kings began to elevate them to official, public roles. John II, known as the Good, had a long-term affair with Roulette Donné. But it was under Charles VI, the Mad, that the official mistress truly took shape. As the king descended into periods of severe mental illness, his court turned to a young woman named Odette de Champdivers to soothe him. She became his loving companion, known as the Little Queen, and bore him a daughter. His son, Charles VII, the Victorious, is perhaps more famous for his mistress than for his role in ending the 100 Years' War alongside Joan of Arc. His lover, Agnes Sorel, was the first ever officially recognized royal mistress in French history. She was beautiful, intelligent, and wielded enormous influence at court. She was given titles, lands, and showered with gifts, setting a precedent for all future royal favorites. After Agnes's mysterious death, the king quickly found a replacement in her cousin, Antoinette de Magnelais. The Renaissance brought with it a flourishing of art, culture, and, you guessed it, royal mistresses. Francis I, the father of letters, was a true patron of the arts and a notorious womanizer. His court was a playground of flirtation and romance. His most famous mistresses were the influential Francoise de Foix and the cunning and Epicelou, who dominated court politics for years. His son, Henry II, was completely devoted to one woman, and it wasn't his wife, Catherine de' Medici. It was Diane de Poitiers, a woman 20 years his senior. Their love story is one for the ages. He gave her castles, jewels, and immense power, effectively making her the uncrowned Queen of France. The last Valois kings were no different. Charles IX had a devoted mistress, Marie Touchet, with whom he had a son. And Henry III, known for his eccentricities, had a string of favorites, both male and female, including the prominent ladies Renée de Rieux and Francoise Babou. Then came the Bourbons, and things got even more extravagant. Henry IV, the Great, was great in battle and even greater in the bedroom. He had a legendary appetite for women, with estimates of over 50 mistresses. His most famous loves were Gabrielle d'Estrées, whom he desperately wanted to marry, and the scheming Henriette d'Entragues. His love letters are passionate, and his juggling of wives, mistresses, and politics is the stuff of legend. Of course, no discussion of royal excess is complete without Louis XIV, the Sun King. His reign was the epitome of absolute monarchy, and his love life was just as absolute. He had a succession of powerful mistresses who defined the eras of his reign. First came the gentle and shy Louise de la Vallière, then the fiery and ambitious Athénée de Montespan, with whom he had 7 children. Finally, in his later years, he secretly married his last great love, the pious Madame de Maintenon. His great-grandson, Louis XV, the Beloved, took this tradition to an industrial scale. His court was infamous for its debauchery. He started with the 4 Maillé sisters, one after another. Then came the most iconic mistress of all, Madame de Pompadour. A brilliant patron of the arts and a skilled political operator, she was the de facto prime minister of France for nearly a long time. After her death, her place was taken by the glamorous and controversial Madame du Barry, whose journey from a commoner to the king's favorite scandalized the court. It's said Louis XV had over 100 mistresses in his lifetime, a staggering number even by royal standards. The French Revolution seemingly put a stop to this, but when monarchy returned in the form of an empire, so did the affairs. Napoleon Bonaparte, while famously in love with his wife Josephine, had numerous dalliances, especially during his military campaigns. Pauline Force in Egypt, the opera singer Giuseppina Grassini, and Eleonore de Noël, who bore him his first son, are just a few of the at least 10 documented mistresses he had. After Napoleon's fall, the restored Bourbon king, Charles X, was known for his lifelong devotion to one mistress, the beautiful Louise de Palastrin. Their relationship was more of a quiet, romantic partnership than a public scandal. Finally, we arrive at France's last monarch, Napoleon III. He ruled during the vibrant Second Empire, a time of glamour and social change. While married to the Empress Eugenie, Napoleon III had a wandering eye. He had several high-profile affairs with women like the Italian beauty Virginia Oldoni, Countess of Castiglione, who was also an Italian spy, and the English socialite Harriet Howard, who financed his rise to power. He also had long-term relationships with Eleonore Vergiat and Marianne Waluska, fathering children with both. From polygamous warrior kings to the calculated political partnerships of the Renaissance, and the sheer decadence of the Bourbons, the history of the French monarchy is inextricably linked with the stories of these illicit loves. These weren't just personal failings, they shaped politics, sparked wars, and defined entire cultural eras. The story of France is not just a story of its kings, but also of the women who shared their beds, their secrets, and their power. Thanks for joining me on this journey through the scandalous side of French history. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories from the past. See you next time.